Welcome to week 2 in COM 3350 publication design. Simplest thing in the world we're doing this week is a business card. And easy to set up, but it's a real good way to see how you work with grid patterns. And that's really what we're about this week. So after I show you a little about grids, little confession for you. The InDesign intro on how to do this is from last year. Adobe has taken down its really good tutorials, but I saved them and captured them last year. So they're part of the tutorial. You can see how to set the whole thing up. So yeah, you will see I'm dressed different and the kitchen's a little different, and I admit it, but it's good stuff. Anyway, here is this week. Again, we're working with business card, and next week we're getting ahead, topography. But anyway, grids, basics of grids. And I have this in the, here we go.
Visual design on the web, which is visual design on the web with ortho in front of it. But its roots, we're talking web design, its roots on screen and even on paper come from some of the earliest and most basic aspects of typography. In English or Spanish, for instance, we read from left to right.
See, this is why we do not like to center things when you'll see why centering is just something we just don't need to do.
Languages like Hebrew and Arabic from right to left. The alignment of this text gives humans a consistent reference line. We know exactly where the next line is going to start. And this passage can be a lot more challenging to read in English, mainly because the starting point of each line is different.
Yeah, see, it's hard to read.
But also because it's in German. But alignment isn't just about pushing text to one side. In visual design, we can align other edges of other elements. In many ways, the more we visually align things, the better they look. Don't believe it? Enter knolling, the art of placing stuff at right angles. Randomness becomes beautiful, if only we organize it. Seriously, you can have the messiest desk in the history of the world. Watch this. If you employ a simple knolling technique, things get better. But for now, how can we take this to the next level? Well, we can use grids to help us. Grids don't just mean everything is nested in its own tiny cell. We can have content span cells. Grids help us align things vertically and horizontally. And unlike graph paper, not every grid has.
Think about this for the business card. Lay out your headline here, lay out your content down there, and it's neat.
To have the same size for every row and column. As long as we're reinforcing that horizontal and vertical alignment, the size of each of these can vary widely. So when do we use grids in our designs? Well, sometimes starting with a grid is a good way. Some people start with guides. This is a 12-column guide. And sometimes starting with this can help us make decisions about where to place and.
Yeah, you can put an element here or here or here, but it allows you to line up the things below to the things above.
Size things, a reference. But a lot of times we don't even need that. Maybe we don't need 12 lines. We have a section, for instance. We have a container inside of that that's more narrow than the section. Isn't this technically a 3-column layout? Well, we asked a senior software engineer that same question. Elena, is this a 3-column layout?
Yes.
It's symmetrical, but we don't need 30 vertical lines here to get the picture.
Yes, it's 3 columns altogether, but it's laid out on a 12-column grid. You notice how those 3 columns are lined up to the edge of the grid. So then when you put something down below it, it'll line up.
But what about horizontal lines? Let's say we have an element here and an element here. By aligning these elements to a horizontal line, we're creating even visual consistency. This is a grid. In short, it helps to think of grids, especially uneven ones that aren't made of perfect squares, as guides, like in Photoshop or InDesign. Create some guides, align stuff, things look great, work done. But sometimes it's not so great to use grids. Circular or curved layouts are tough on their own. If you try to start aligning this stuff to a grid, not so.
I don't know. You can start, you have a multiple horizontals and you can line that part up. You can line this stuff up. You could place your, by multiple columns, you could place this leaf right smack dab in the middle. If you divide this into 12 columns, you'd have one column here, one column there. So you could still do it.
So great. Same with one-dimensional layouts. A lot of these involve stacking or sorting things in different widths. Centering them can look really clean, and it's not necessarily a grid. And sometimes elements of a design have different widths. Take a look at Google Images. The top section is one-dimensional. In other words, it has everything lined up going only one way. But each item has a different width based on the text inside. The other thing.
But look at this as a grid pattern below. This is a grid pattern. So within the grid, you can move some things around, stuff to think about. And working with the grids, and you can see it here. This is a 3-column grid. This is 2 of the 3. This is 1 of the 3. And see how lining things up side to side. Look at here. Headlines lined up horizontally, as is your text, all nicely lined up. See, this is 2-column, this is a 4-column grid. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is actually 3 columns. That's 4 columns. 1 of the columns here, 2 columns here. It takes up 2 of the 4 columns, and this takes up a third. So it's nicely set up throughout. Baseline alignment, again, the headline is 2 grids above the copy. And so if you had another element down below, it would also be 2 grids from the copy. Very nice. See, look at this. All the way nicely straight across, nicely straight across. This is 2 of the columns. This is 2 of the columns. Columns and grids throughout. See, 3 columns. So our vertical, our horizontal lines straight across on those grids. 3 columns, 2 of the 3 columns, straight across, straight across. Makes these complicated things a lot easier. 3-column grid. This is still 3 columns, and this allows you to throw it right in the middle. You can see it on these pages. Visual hierarchy helps you organize material. You start here and you read across. So, see? Straight across. 2 of the 5-column layout. It's 2 of the 5, 3 of the 5. Nice thing to think about when you put your headlines together, what we call the rule of thirds. We'll put it on the grid. Your important elements go on the crosshairs of the thirds. Pictures and designs. Why don't you center things? Because it splits your design in half. Thirds hold it together. Yeah, break the grid. I mean, still a 3-column grid, and then you just throw something on. And if you just throw stuff together, we have what we call the ransom note effect. And see how you can set things up. Look at this is the image was put 3 of the 4 columns on this grid. It's also 4 columns. Everything is lined up vertically and horizontally to be neat. Help you go diagonal, because you can choose line up your corners and the diagonals, so they're neat and regular. By counting your grids, you can line up things and leave your white space. So that's basically the point of this, doing the business card. I'll show you. Good and bad business cards. Just kind of thrown together. Not lined up with anything here. This, again, centering, little bit more space there, little less space here. Very messy. Whoa, this is, we're getting into what we call the ransom note territory. But if you work it on that nice grid pattern, one vertical alignment, there's 1 grid here, maybe 3 here, 1 grid here, 1 grid here. Very, very nice. This is set up on a 3-column pattern. 1 column, see how even your spaces are? So, and now this too. 1 grid, this is probably a lot more, this is 2 columns, split right in half. 1 column here, 2 columns there. So you can see how it works for this assignment. Now I'll get more specific in the next video, which is how to set up the business card. Yes, it's last year's video because Adobe took down tutorials, but I got a new one. But I mean, these old ones, these will show you. So it's time to think of using the Adobe program in design, because that's what all the designers use. It's something to get used to. You can call our help desk and they'll help you set up. So it's time. Good luck with it. Again, you could email me drafts and enjoy.